coming for 2009.
This is better. That's soy, baby, that's soy.
It's easy to see why people are excited about Roundup Ready-to-Yield soybeans. Massive yields, coming for 2009.
Look, I noticed that this morning. I had to throw it in. I'm sorry if it's irrelevant. Because, of course, when they go to farms in Paraguay and in Brazil, because they do have to sell this shit to people, and they're very successful at it, they don't show these, I don't think, because I don't think the Paraguayan farmer cares if he can surf in his soy. But what this points out is an attempt, and it's been successful in that there's so many people adopting, and I'll give you some stats, I hope, on genetically modified soy. They're doing this public relations thing where they tell you, look, there are people starving in the world, okay? All right. And no one can really argue that. It's a fact. There are people starving in the world, so what we do as a company, or what we want to do, is create a way that plants can survive in extreme conditions, that you can get more food for your crop. So what we're doing is feeding people. Who's against feeding people? The problem is, because you can't argue with any of the things they just said, the problem is that they don't discuss any of the side effects. They also don't bring up the fact, as some of you may be thinking, we actually had enough food and still have enough food if we don't even use the genetically modified soy right now. There is enough food to feed the people in the world, but they act like there wasn't, so what we needed to do was this, because this would guarantee food in every mouth. They should have known about that Burger King hack. That would have done the trick. No, we don't eat that. So let me show you the cool thing. I swear it's here. This is like my house. You look in a pile of things and we see what we find. Yes, okay. So, yeah, Greenpeace made this, so you know you can take up your grievances with Greenpeace if you don't like the list. But it's an accurate list. I checked most of it. Turns out that Monsanto didn't just make their version of soy, Roundup Ready. They also took the kind liberty of, through the last 10 to 15 years, buying up every possible seed they could in the world. I'm talking about, well, here, it'll scroll while I talk, I think, if I'm any good at messing with, yeah. They bought up cotton, they bought up corn, and not just one corn, they bought up all kinds of corn. They bought the intellectual property to our food. I think they were high-fiving each other when they bought a special kind of cotton that only grows in India. It's a major crop for certain sections, parts of India, and they bought that one up, so now every time you use that cotton, you owe them money. And they've been doing this. It's such a long list, I got tired of recording this because I was scrolling so slow. I can't even read this to you. It's a long list, and it stops at 2005 because I couldn't find updated info. So one of their tasks has been, not just in soy, this goes well beyond, it's to own the rights to our food. And from the looks of things, they're halfway there, if not already there. So I thought I would share that list with you, and you'll think about it over lunch. Go. Here we go. So some of the side effects you've heard about, but I made a little list anyway just to make your life more miserable as you think about these things. You know, if you make a plant that can withstand the existing insects, there's an old expression, nature finds a way. There is already evidence that insects get stronger. So they're going to have to, this is a big moneymaker actually, because then you have to make a stronger pesticide, and I'll sell that to you as well. And that'll cost a little more because it's stronger. But anyway, one side effect, weeds, pests get tougher. The other thing is compromising conventional crops. I didn't bring the video because it would be too much. I think you would have had enough. But there have been cases in, I believe, Canada, and you start to see cases in Latin America where a strong wind blows, and all of a sudden the farm next to the genetically modified farm, the regular guy, I like to call him, or girl, all of a sudden their crops start turning up evidence of that they got the Monsanto Roundup Ready. But you didn't buy that, and it's growing on your property. And they actually have people that will go to your farm and investigate, kind of like checking if you've downloaded movies somehow. And they'll go to your farm, and if they see proof that that seed is growing, and you may not know it, or you may, I guess, you know, it may have happened by accident, I hope, you'll get fined. And if, of course, you don't pay your fine, maybe you get jailed. All of a sudden, you're going to jail because you were just farming, and some dude next to you was growing this new type of soy. And furthermore, your regular seed, which may have been passed down generations and generations, I've been asking my grandfather, like, Where do we keep the family seed vault? Well, that sounds weird. But I did ask. He's old, he didn't mind. And so they'll actually sue you. Your life could be destroyed because a guy next to you is using these copyrighted seeds, basically. It all comes back to open source, doesn't it? Wow. Destroying a rainforest, it used to be very popular when I was younger to talk about destroying the rainforest. I don't know if that's still a popular thing to talk about, and I don't care. I think it should be. And one of the great side effects of soy farming specifically, and genetically modified soy farming as well, is that it's destroying rainforest at a rate faster than ever in history. And I'll show you a little photo that'll make us all feel more bad. Then there's long-term effects on humans. I mean, this is speculation. We don't really know what happens to us down the line as we consume this type of food. Now, in the European Union, there's a restriction that says you can't sell genetically modified food, soy, to humans for human consumption. But there is a loophole in that, and I'll tell you about it. Hang on, that was a preview. Displacing and sometimes terrorizing native farmers. This is big in Paraguay. You may watch, world news every now and then, and if you have in the last year, you would have seen Paraguayan indigenous people of Paraguay getting their asses kicked on the streets of Asunción in Paraguay, the capital, because they're angry at the government. And I'll show you some ass kicking if you like watching that. Hang on. Oh yeah. BR 163. That's a highway. I can just picture it. Rock and roll. And your favorite SUV riding down through the Amazon. It's 1,770 kilometers of soy highway. That's like Lisbon to Paris, I think. Yes, it is. Lisbon to Paris, if you've ever gone that road, that's a lot, is my point. And so every time they expand, you've got to build highway to lead to the fantastic soy farms, genetically modified, of course. And this is still going, because it's a big moneymaker. All right, so there is some response in the world. I got in touch with well, he doesn't want to talk to me anymore, but I tried to get in touch with a Belgian guy who leads a group of people who went down to Portugal. Yes, one of my home countries, Portugal. We grow a lot of genetically modified crap. And just to show you an example, this is not soy, this is corn, but the issue is pretty similar. And I just had to show you bits and pieces of this. Here's a whole lot of text you don't want to read. So we'll fast forward. And here's an annoying news effect. Well, we can watch this. Ready? Go.
Param cerca de 2 hectares de milho. O proprietário do milheiral nem queria acreditar no protesto. A GNR acabou por intervir e afastar os jovens do local. Trata-se de um grupo recentemente formado, autodenominado Verde Eufémia, que promete repetir estas ações noutros locais onde existam plantações de produtos geneticamente modificados.
Stand by for action. Walking. Corn. So they went to the farm and they just started destroying corn. It's an act of civil disobedience, not vandalism. And the weirdest part has to be when the farmer shows up. Oh yeah, and the press was there.
Vinha aqui gravar esta merda, é parte disso. Rogério, morrem 5 nas Filipinas e quantos morrem à fome no DMI?
So he brings up the farmers yelling at the people there. I'm going to cut it off. You have to watch the film, not here, I guess. And he brings up the fact that people are starving, and these quote activists are destroying his genetically modified corn. So again, there's that very successful public relations campaign that farmers wholeheartedly believe. A lot of farmers that I know in Portugal, even. Yes, I know genetically modified corn growers. They say, look, this is better for us. This is better for the people who eat food. So, don't come here with your high morality. Here I am with my morality. So there is civil disobedience throughout the world. There was a large meeting this year in Bonn regarding what was going to happen with, well, not just soy, but farming policy in general. And there were huge demonstrations, or at least large demonstrations, against the policies that have been adopted. There's also the repression that I talked about. I mentioned Paraguay, a place where indigenous farmers have found that they show up to their land. I mean, they're not always the most savvy in terms of ownership and purchasing large-scale farms, and all of a sudden the government has sold plots of land from out from underneath them. You know, their traditional land is suddenly put up for sale. They didn't know it. They come back and they've lost their rights to it. Or they get offered a whole lot of money. They take the money. They don't realize the side effects, and that you can never go back, obviously. Here's a little BBC News report.
Paraguay's landless peasants are angry. That anger exploded on the streets of the capital, Asunción, and was met with tear gas, rubber bullets and a water cannon. The protesters are demanding agricultural reform. They say that Paraguayan land is being occupied illegally by Brazilian farmers, and that corrupt officials have allowed these outsiders to acquire their land for decades. The peasants have stepped up their demands for land distribution since Fernando Lugo, a former Catholic bishop, came to power in August. His election victory ended the 61-year reign of the Colorado Party. With a reputation as the bishop of the poor, he promised to address the needs of the country's long-suffering farmers and indigenous communities. But after the violent clashes, he warned that the government would take action.
We'll use all the laws available to deal with any group who tries to destabilise or break the order, whether they come from the country or are businessmen or other groups who are not pleased with our social policy.
Paraguay is one of the world's biggest suppliers of genetically modified soya. Much of the farmland is in the hands of Brazilians, who practice large-scale mechanized agriculture. This offers little work for the peasants, who also accuse the Brazilians of deforestation and carelessness with poisonous pesticides. Lugo has urged the peasants to give him time to implement an orderly agrarian reform. But as these latest clashes show, the patience of Paraguay's peasants has run out.
So I'm sorry to cut off BBC. It's highly disrespectful. As you can see, it's you know, Paraguay in this case, but it's not the only place in the world where people are revolting. I mean, this is our food. This is the food source. You know, you could be peaceful about a lot of things, but when it comes to starving, at some point you have to put your feet on the ground and resist. And that's what they're doing. And that could get worse over the next few years. Speculation. So there was an attempt, based on what I'm saying, because I'm not the first one to observe this, to make an international agreement that says, all right, Bicycle Mark, leave us alone. We will make an international agreement that says we will farm soy responsibly. It might be genetically modified, but we'll be real careful. We won't allow our genetically modified seed to infect or pollute the farm next to us. We'll pay people properly. We won't make it too expensive, and etc. But the system was made by the agro-businesses, and it's volunteer. Which reminds me of back in the day when Reagan was president, and I think he appointed DuPont, which was the largest chemical company, to be in charge of environmental protection, which was a clever idea back then. Oh, it was rejected, by the way, by a majority of NGOs around the world. This big to-do. They protested the whole meeting. So gone is that agreement. Let's go to the EU, since that's where we are. I mentioned before, in the European Union, you cannot eat, or you shouldn't be able to eat, genetically modified soy. So your soy milk is safe, as far as we know. But there is one exception. Most of the soy that is imported, and it's a lot, from Latin America, genetically modified soy, it can go to animals. So just to repeat that so that I'm clear, because I know I speak quickly, the genetically modified soy doesn't go straight into your mouth. That's not allowed. But it can go to your animals, or your neighbor's animals. And so that is okay. That's something to keep in mind. I think I brought some... Oh, I made a pie chart. I worked very hard on this. I really did. The existing one sucked. Of all the EU imports of soy, I'm not going to... It's like some metric trillion tons. 56% comes from Brazil at this point, 33% from Argentina, 2% from Paraguay, and only 6% from the USA. However, the USA does supply a small nation called China with most of its soy, and that is a whole lot of mouths eating. The USA specializes in GMO soy. The most in the world comes from